I pretended to be dying of cancer to see if my kids would visit. Only one did, so only one inherited. The whole thing started when I turned 65 and realized I hadn't heard from two of my three kids in over 8 months. You know that feeling when you're scrolling through your phone contacts and you see names that used to call you every week, but now the last message was some generic holiday greeting. That was my life with my eldest son and my daughter. Meanwhile, my youngest son would drop by every Sunday like clockwork, helping me with groceries and just sitting around talking about everything and nothing. I spent weeks stewing over this situation, feeling increasingly bitter about how my other two children had essentially written me off once they got married and moved to different states. The more I thought about it, the more I convinced myself that they only saw me as an ATM machine or a future inheritance check. My wife had passed away 3 years earlier, and I guess I expected my kids to step up and be more present in my life, but apparently that was asking too much. The idea hit me one evening while I was watching some medical drama on television. The main character was dealing with a terminal diagnosis, and all his estranged family members suddenly appeared out of nowhere, showering him with love and attention. I started wondering if my own kids would react the same way if they thought I was seriously ill. The thought consumed me for days until I finally decided to put it to the test. I started small, mentioning during phone calls that I had been feeling tired lately and that my doctor wanted to run some tests. I made sure to sound concerned, but not overly dramatic about it. My youngest son immediately offered to drive me to the appointment, while my other two kids just said they hoped everything would be okay and changed the subject. That response alone told me everything I needed to know about their priorities. Over the next few weeks, I escalated the story gradually. I told them the tests had come back with some concerning results and that I needed to see a specialist. I even went so far as to actually schedule and attend some real medical appointments to make my story more believable. The doctor was confused about why I was there since I felt fine, but I just told him I wanted a general checkup and some routine blood work done. My youngest son was by my side through every supposed medical appointment, rearranging his work schedule and bringing me homemade soup that his wife had prepared. He never once asked about my will or my finances, just focused on making sure I was comfortable and not alone. His genuine concern and love were so obvious that it made the absence of his siblings even more glaring. Meanwhile, my eldest son sent a few text messages asking for updates, but never offered to visit or help in any concrete way. My daughter was even worse, basically going radio silent, except for the occasional message saying she was thinking of me and praying for my recovery. Neither of them seemed to grasp the severity of what I was telling them, or maybe they just didn't care enough to inconvenience themselves. The real test came when I decided to tell them I had received a definitive diagnosis. I called each of them separately and delivered the news that I had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer and that the doctors were giving me somewhere between 6 months to 2 years to live. I tried to make my voice sound shaky and defeated, like a man who had just received the worst news of his life. My youngest son broke down crying on the phone and said he would be over within the hour. He arrived with tears in his eyes and a bag packed for an extended stay, ready to move in and take care of me for however long I needed. His immediate, visceral reaction to my supposed diagnosis was exactly what I had hoped to see from all my children, but it only made the behavior of the other two more disappointing. My eldest son expressed sympathy over the phone, but said he was dealing with some work deadlines and would try to visit in a few weeks when things calmed down. A few weeks. His father had just told him he was dying, and he was worried about work deadlines. My daughter was somehow even more callous, saying she would keep me in her thoughts and prayers, but making no mention of actually coming to see me. I kept up the charade for almost 3 months, with my youngest son essentially becoming my full-time caregiver. He quit his part-time evening job to spend more time with me, convinced his wife to help with meal preparation, and even started researching experimental treatments and clinical trials. The guilt I felt watching him sacrifice so much for what he believed was my final chapter was overwhelming, but I told myself it was necessary to prove a point. During those 3 months, my eldest son visited exactly once, staying for about 2 hours and spending most of that time on his phone handling work calls. My daughter never visited at all, though she did send a care package with some generic get-well cards and store-bought cookies. The contrast between their behavior and their brother's dedication was so stark that it actually surprised me, even though I had suspected this would be the outcome. The situation reached a breaking point when my youngest son started talking about taking out a loan to pay for experimental treatments that weren't covered by insurance. He was literally willing to go into debt to try to save my life, while his siblings couldn't even be bothered to drive across state lines to spend time with their supposedly dying father. That's when I knew I had learned everything I needed to know about my children's true characters. I realized I couldn't let him sacrifice his financial future for my fake illness, so I started planning how to end the charade. I told him that I had been accepted into a clinical trial for a new treatment and that the early results were showing promise. Over the next few weeks, I gradually improved my supposed condition, claiming that the experimental treatment was working better than anyone had expected. My eldest son and daughter were thrilled to hear about my miraculous recovery, sending congratulatory messages and expressing relief that they wouldn't have to deal with the trauma of losing their father. Neither of them seemed to find it strange that they had barely been present during my illness, or that their brother had shouldered the entire burden of caring for me during what they thought were my final months. The experience completely changed how I viewed my relationships with my children. I realized that my youngest son's love and devotion were genuine and unconditional, while his siblings only seemed to care about me when it was convenient for them. The fake illness had revealed the truth about who my children really were as people, and I couldn't unsee what I had learned. I spent the next several months thinking about how to handle this revelation. I had always planned to divide my estate equally among my 3 children, but now I questioned whether that was fair given how differently they had treated me during my supposed final months. My youngest son had proven that he would sacrifice everything for his family, while the other 2 had shown that their father's life and death barely registered as a priority in their busy lives. The decision to change my will wasn't made lightly, but it felt like the only way to acknowledge the difference in how my children had treated me. I contacted my lawyer and had my estate restructured so that my youngest son would inherit everything, while his siblings would receive only token amounts. I also wrote detailed letters explaining my decision, making it clear that their inheritance was based on their behavior during my fake illness. I never told any of my children the truth about my deception, deciding that they would learn about it through the letters I had written to be opened after my actual death. My youngest son continued to check on me regularly, still worried about my health and making sure I was taking care of myself. His ongoing concern and love made me feel both grateful and guilty about the elaborate lie I had constructed. The hardest part was watching my youngest son worry unnecessarily about my health for months after my supposed recovery. He would ask about follow-up appointments and remind me to take medications I wasn't actually prescribed. I had to maintain the fiction that I was in remission and needed ongoing monitoring, which meant continuing to lie to the one child who had proven his love and devotion. Looking back, I'm not sure if what I did was right or wrong, but I know it revealed truths about my family that I needed to understand. My fake illness showed me which of my children would be there for me when I truly needed them, and which ones would find excuses to stay away. That knowledge, however painful, has helped me make decisions about my legacy that I believe are fair and appropriate. The whole experience taught me that sometimes you have to create extreme situations to see people's true nature. My eldest son and daughter had shown me that their love was conditional and convenient, while my youngest son had proven that his love was genuine and self-sacrificing. When my real final chapter comes, I know exactly who will be by my side, and I've structured my estate accordingly. I still maintain the fiction that I'm in remission from cancer, and probably will until the day I actually die. My youngest son deserves to know the truth about his siblings' behavior, but I've decided that truth will come through the letters I've written rather than through a confession while I'm still alive. Sometimes the most important truths are the ones we discover through the tests we create for ourselves and others.